Is the story of your true life so remarkable that it's a book just waiting to be written? Now, Good Morning America joins forces with publishing giant Simon & Schuster in search of the next great American memoir. A book all about your extraordinary life. Tell us your story of heroism or kindness, bravery, love, or forgiveness. Have you witnessed a stunning life event with an insider's view? Survived the unthinkable? Overcome extreme odds? Everyone has an incredible life story to share, and if America chooses your story, imagine this. Your life may be turned into a book for all to read, and you'll get an extraordinary prize on top of it. It's Good Morning America's The Story of My Life, the search for the next great American real-life story, and it's a book that can't be written without you.
This is going to be great. This is a true American tale. Robin is here to tell us about our first finalist. What do you have? Look at all this.
This was not easy, Chris. As you can see, we had over
Great.
6,000 entries, but our first finalist comes from Erie, Pennsylvania. It's about a mother, a daughter, a mystery, and an incredible twist.
My name is Betty Ferguson, and this is the story of my life. I have walked from the depths of darkness into the world of inner peace, and forgiveness set me free.
Betty Ferguson says that her life really didn't begin until the birth of her first child, Debbie.
When she was born, I felt a closeness to somebody that I really never felt before.
She and her husband, Dick Gamma, had 4 other children, filling Betty's life with happiness and busyness. But Debbie and her mother shared a special bond.
She was becoming spiritual-minded. She was gorgeous.
Betty says her daughter Debbie loved life, was a typical teenager. Debbie and her best friend Robin Bjork were twirlers together.
We were inseparable. We didn't hang out with anybody else. It was her and I exclusively.
Debbie became a double twirler where she twirled 2 batons, and I was very excited for her because I didn't really have much of a life of my own.
Then something terrible happened. On a muggy August day in 1975, Betty's world turned upside down. She and Debbie had an argument. Debbie left the house. Betty thought maybe her daughter had run away.
We started looking for Debbie, going to her friend's house, calling people.
After days of agony, devastating news. Debbie's body had been found in a creek with copper-coated wire around her hands, neck, and ankles. She'd been raped and strangled, said the coroner.
I said, she's dead. It took my breath away. I could feel the air. I could not get it in my lungs. I thought I was dying in that chair. No, 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 repeat it over and over. No, 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 no.
Robin Bjork helped identify her body.
She was wearing my shirt, and it was devastating. Sorry. It's something that doesn't go away.
Anger soon overwhelmed Betty, as well as a hunger to find out who did this to her daughter. Weeks went by before the first clue appeared.
I saw something in the newspaper.
She was now living a real-life murder mystery.
The wire that was embedded around Debbie's neck, wrists, and ankles was copper-coated wire. I remember hearing the police say that.
She read there were nearby burglaries of copper-coated wire. A private detective soon found a connection to the most unlikely suspect. A shock to Betty, it was Debbie's favorite teacher, her English teacher, Raymond Payne. But police would take their time. It took several months for them to test the wire and make a stronger connection to Payne. The wire matched, and he was arrested. A year after Debbie's murder, Raymond Payne pled to a general charge of homicide. He said he tied Debbie to a tree and that he didn't rape or kill her, that he didn't know how she died. But a 3-judge panel decided it was first-degree murder, and he got life in prison. Hatred consumed Betty like a venom within her.
I hated him more than I hated anyone in my life. I dragged that hate with me everywhere I went.
She emotionally abandoned her other children, started to drink heavily. It was her darkest hour. But in a startling turn, an incredible twist, 6 years after her daughter's death, Betty started to talk about forgiving the man who killed Debbie.
Debbie died that day. And I had to figure out how to live on earth without her. And the method I chose was to forgive Ray. I did it to save my family and myself.
Amazingly, Betty took her forgiveness a step further by visiting Ray Payne in prison and telling him herself.
The guard opened the door, and Ray came into the waiting room, and I opened my arms, and he opened his arms, and I hugged him. We cried.
But not everyone forgives Payne.
I absolutely do not forgive him because he took a part of my life that I will never be the same.
But she says she's proud of Betty and is moved by her journey to forgive.
When you can look at a woman and say, you know what, I hope that I can be that someday.
Hi, Ann.
Betty visits Debbie's grave with Debbie's little sister. She talks to Debbie. She even tells her about our book contest.
It's the story of my life. 30 years later. Forgiving Ray doesn't have anything to do with my grief over Debbie. Grief is a journey, and someday me and Debbie will meet again.
Today's story is about a young woman's strength in the face of terrible loss, but her courage has kept her strong.
My name is Farah Ahmadi. This is the story of my life. A story about hope, love, family, and some angels who helped me.
Angels have carried her all along the way, she says. The high school students of Wheaton, Illinois are getting a real-life history lesson from Farah.
Farah's an amazing kid. She's one of the reasons why I come to work every day. And I wish there were 200 more kids just like her.
It's a story of love that begins in the heart of war in Afghanistan.
We had this gorgeous house and our family and business.
Something terrible happened to Farah on her way to school one morning.
It was a bright light and the ground just shook.
She had stepped on a landmine.
And I started screaming, "Help me, help me."
Then came the first angel in this story, a neighbor who rushed her to a hospital just in the nick of time. She was bleeding, her legs mangled. Near death, she was soon transported to a hospital in Germany. Doctors fused her right leg, making it permanently unbendable, and amputated the other leg at the knee. She wears a prosthetic left leg.
I couldn't cry. It was so shocking to me.
She stayed there without visitors for 2 years. Her mother back home kept a locket of her hair.
Nobody was there with me.
Until another angel came, a woman named Christina. Only 7 years old at the time, Farah is not sure if the woman in this photo is Christina, but she says Christina dried her tears and gave her the love and comfort she needed. She returned to Afghanistan, bringing joy to her parents and 4 brothers and sisters.
I was walking, and I got taller, and then I got fatter.
But her giddiness at being home was soon replaced by the daily terror of rocket attacks.
If the rocket was coming close to us, you know, we can tell from the sound.
Then one day, she and her mother returned from the market to yet another terror.
I woke up with them and had breakfast, and then for lunch, they were gone.
Her father and 2 sisters were killed by a rocket attack on their home.
My mom was crying. She was pulling her hair.
That had to be beyond the beyond for a child to witness that.
There are no home videos, no photo albums, no family scrapbooks anymore. Just memories and tears. Months later, her 2 brothers, she says, fled to Pakistan to escape being drafted by the Taliban, never to be heard from again, leaving Farah and her mother, Fatima, alone.
She kept me strong. I kept her strong.
Farah and her mother escaped to Pakistan, walking over a mountain. They lived in a refugee camp for 4 years until a relief group brought them to Illinois in May of 2002.
I felt like we were in heaven.
Fatima cannot show her face on television since many women from Afghanistan don't reveal their faces in public. In Chicago, perhaps Farah's most important angel came into her life. Alice Litz, a volunteer for refugee relief. She and her husband John have helped Farah and her mother adjust to American life. And now Farah, despite her physical challenges, is even learning to play golf, which she loves.
That's it.
Yes!
Some of the grown men weren't hitting the ball as far as she was, and I thought that was kind of neat.
I lost my leg. I lost my family. I'm out of my country. But I never gave up. I stood up and fought. And I will keep doing it. And I will keep going.
She has nightmares every night, but Farah still has hope.
The only wish I have to meet my brothers and see my mom smile.
But there is happiness too, like when she and Alice sing together their favorite song, You Raise Me Up by Josh Groban.
You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up.
Listen to the words, hear them sing, an ode to friendship and joy.
We take so much for granted in our lives, and she's been through such a struggle, and you never once hear her complain about it.
If life giving me a lesson, I'm gonna give life a lesson too.
You raise me up to more than I can be.
My name is Mercedes Infante Brodnicki, and this is the story of my life. It's a story of hope, love, and a father's unwavering desire to reunite his family in America. My father was a man that was short in stature, but he had a huge heart. He wasn't handsome or tall or not the kind of man that you would give a second look to, but he was really beautiful inside.
Carlos Infante grew up in Cuba. In 1958, married his beautiful wife, Elda. A year later, a son, Albert, was born. The couple were happy, but Carlos yearned for a better life for his family. So in 1960, he left his wife and young son behind and traveled to America.
Once he got settled, he sent for my mother. But as it turned out, it was winter. It was just starting, and they weren't used to the cold weather. And so he thought it would be better if my mother came by herself, left my brother in Cuba, and then they would send for him in the spring.
The couple decided to leave little Albert with Carlos's aunt. It was a decision that they would regret for the rest of their lives.
By the time that spring came, Castro had declared himself communist. So there was a lot of turmoil in Cuba, and they decided that no one could come or go.
Their only son was stuck in Cuba. The government wouldn't let him go.
It's something like you lost one part to your heart.
They had left him when he was only a little over a year old, and they had so many hopes and dreams for their boy. Albert may have been in Cuba, but Mercedes remembers how he was always present in family photos like this one. They made sure to include him.
There's so many things that they missed as a result of what happened. You know, first steps, first words.
To see their little boy grow into a man. But in 1979, nearly 20 years later, 20 years, joyous news. Cuban Americans were allowed to go back to visit Cuba. The Infante family was on one of the first planes. But after so many years, Elda was actually afraid to meet her own son.
She was afraid that he would reject her. And so, I mean, all those years waiting and missing him and wanting to be with him, she just didn't want to see that in his face.
The family explained to Albert that they never forgot him, had been trying for years to bring him to America. It was a journey of discovery.
We could have been twins. And he looked so much like my father also.
But when the trip was over, once again, they had to leave Albert behind. He still wasn't allowed to leave Cuba.
After we came back, though, instead of things being better, they were worse. Because then Mom got a taste of being together, the five of us. And my father just couldn't live with another day going by with him not being with us.
So Carlos Infante started scheming. He lost weight, grew some facial hair. Remember how Mercedes said her brother looked so much like her father? Well, her father noticed too. It became the centerpiece of his plan for a second visit to Cuba later that year.
My father felt that as a father, he was duty-bound to do what he could to get him here in the United States. And if that meant, you know, he had to sacrifice, well, he sacrificed all his life.
The night before leaving for Cuba, Carlos confided to his best friend, Luis Barroso.
Yeah, like at 1 o'clock in the morning, we sat outside by the water. And that's where he told me all his plans. And he just said, go to bed and don't talk to anyone. And just wait for my phone call. So I did.
Carlos and Elda traveled alone to Cuba on that second trip. On a taxi on the way to the airport in Havana, Carlos informed his wife of his plans. He would not be going back to America with her. Instead, he was giving his passport and documents to Albert. An ultimate sacrifice. He would stay behind in Cuba. The son was finally free. The father, not so lucky.
He got cut.
Carlos was thrown into a Cuban prison and nearly died when he fell into a diabetic coma. It took 4 months for the family to get him out of Cuba and back home. He nearly lost his life, but to Carlos Infante, as long as his son was in America with the family, that was a sacrifice he was willing to make.
To do what he did you had to be more than a man.
I do think he was a hero. I mean, we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the kind of man that he was.
A man small in stature, a selfless giant to those who loved and needed him most. Carlos Infante died in 2001, but he was able to live with his family, his children, the last 22 years of his life in the country he loved.
And now the moment to reveal the winner of the Story of My Life contest. Jen, why don't you do it?
Oh, are we ready?
Sure.
Here it goes.
Indeed.